If you could, would you marry me again? That's the question a man with aphasia asked his wife 9 years after his stroke. Her answer, I would, I would. And this became the title of a research study we are discussing today. But here's the part that should make every SLP, that is, speech language pathologist, and neurologist uncomfortable. Not one of the 5 couples in this study received any education or support about how aphasia would impact their language. Think about that. We know relationships are the foundation of recovery. We know social support predicts outcomes. And yet, we're sending couples home from the hospital with zero tools for navigating the communication breakdowns, role reversals, and identity changes that are about to hit their relationship like a second stroke. If you're a care partner who feels like you've become a completely different person since your spouse's stroke, you're not imagining it. If you feel like your marriage has an identity crisis, that's real. And if you're angry that nobody warned you this was coming, you should be. The research you're about to hear reveals something the aphasia field has been missing. While we've been talking about identity theft for people with aphasia, care partners are experiencing their own identity shift. And the relationship itself has a third identity that nobody's been addressing. Today, I am joined by 2 remarkable speech pathologists who are changing this. Allie Reed is studying what everyone experiences but nobody talks about: how aphasia changes marriages. Based in Chicago, Allie works at Lingraphica, connecting people with aphasia and care partners to community support. But she wanted to do more than connect people. She wanted answers. Her recent research gave a name to something care partners have been feeling: the identity shift that happens when you suddenly become the decision maker, the spokesperson, the one who handles everything your partner used to do. She's proving that care partners need support too, and that speech pathologists should be helping couples, not just individuals. Allie's advisor, Dr. Jackie Hinckley, has dedicated 40 years to one mission: helping people with aphasia live full lives, not just pass tests. She's a professor at Nova Southeastern University, chairs the National Aphasia Association Board, and founded Voices of Hope for Aphasia. Long before it was standard practice, she was pushing the field to look beyond language recovery to life recovery, believing that aphasia affects your whole life, your relationships, your identity, and your ability to participate. That is what matters. Today, we're here to talk about marriages, identity, and why supporting couples needs to become the standard of care. Would you marry me again? Allie's PhD project is about intimacy, connection, relationships when couples have aphasia.
Yes.
And this is just not a topic we talk about. Just doesn't come up a lot in speech pathology.
Mhm.
So, Allie, we want to dig into your research.
If you could, would you marry me again? The impact of aphasia on marriage.
You interviewed 5 couples. Tell us a little bit about who wanted to participate and what were they looking to get out of participating in this research.
All of the spouses had aphasia. This was something that had impacted their love and relationship and marriage, but their speech therapist hadn't talked about it. It wasn't online anywhere. It wasn't really talked about in aphasia circles. Something that they were excited to be able to share about and how it affected their relationship, which was really great to be able to capture.
This on their radar early on in the rehab days, or was it more or less once I think of it as the dust settling after rehab and the house is quiet and you're in this kind of day-to-day routine, and that's when you start they realize it, but really becomes a parent, communication's very different now.
This is those first few months, even the first year, their world has been turned upside down. And the majority of their lives are dictated by doctor's appointments, therapy appointments, new medications, and it's just a whirlwind. And so the focus on love and marriage and communication with a spouse, I don't think it really is at the forefront for those first few months. Figure out how to make life happen again. If they're safe, if they're comfortable, if they're to be at home alone and walk and all those things. So focus on relationship. I don't think it comes until much later.
That
Yeah.
what Allie is saying is true for couples with stroke, whether they've had aphasia or not. We actually do know that there are three common phases, just like what Allie was talking about. First is sort of chaos, and then it's working to reestablish the marriage and the relationship, and then finally the evolution of it, which I think is a lot of what Allie's research is tapping into. And it's so important because maybe as many as 50% of couples who are going through stroke and aphasia are at risk for divorce. So this is a really critical issue.
It is. When would you say they felt like we need to have help? Did any of these five couples bring it up to their speech pathologist, or were they even doing ongoing treatment? Or were they just out there floating around, as I often think of it, unless they get tied into something like Join In or Aphasia Recovery Connection or one of these online groups? So
Mm-hmm.
many families don't have these resources. They don't know about these resources.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, so many families aren't even told what aphasia is. So how can you Google first if you don't know what the name of the thing you have is? Yeah, there's a huge gap there. And from the couples that I've spoken with so far, both in this project and a project Hinckley and I are currently working on, none of their speech pathologists have addressed this with them. None of their doctors or nurses or therapists have addressed how aphasia is going to impact their relationship and their love and marriage and communication with each other. So we have a lot of work to do as far as education goes, being able to support couples after dust settles.
Very much. What was something unexpected that maybe you were thinking the conversations would go one way, but maybe took a right turn and you learned something you didn't expect from these couples?
This is my first project in my PhD, so I learned was that aphasia affects many parts of a relationship. I thought, oh, it's just no, it's so much more than that, and it ripples out. And the care partner's experience very different from the person with this experience, and their relationship identity as a whole very interesting. We learn the many different ways in which aphasia impact marriages and how many opportunities we as speech pathologists have to be able to and support.
Could we take it from the perspective of each party? Could we maybe start with a person who has aphasia and how do they perceive their relationship and connection? What did they maybe feel was missing or what was strong?
Sure. Yeah, so I think that the biggest thing that came through from our participants with aphasia was this overwhelming loss of themselves, loss of abilities, loss of their roles in the home and in their workplace, and loss of identity and loss of their partnership they are as a spouse. And with that, a lot of now their spouse is having to do a lot of things for them that they can't help with anymore. And it really changes how they see themselves as spouses and as partners. So I think that was the biggest takeaway from the experience of the person with aphasia.
I want to tap into that word guilt for a second because there's a lot that goes both ways in the dynamic when stroke or aphasia. Yes, we're talking about aphasia, but this also holds true for stroke. There's a lot of guilt, and when a person feels guilt, you tend to act a little differently. You connect differently, or you pull back. Were these couples experiencing some of this?
Isolation is rampant in aphasia. This is just unfortunately something that happens as people with aphasia become very isolated because of their communication impairment. And that isn't just outside of the house, that can happen inside the house too. And many people with aphasia just kind of retreat because this communication impairment is so detrimental to them. Applies to their relationship with their spouse too.
I know that when you publish a research paper, not everything gets to make the cut. Was there some interesting parts that came up from your research that you didn't get to put in this paper? What ended up on the cutting room floor, but is still very important for families to know?
Yes, there was a lot that was cut, and I'm hoping we can include some of it in our next project as well. But I think one of my favorite things that was cut, unfortunately, and I'll have Dr. Hinckley share hers after as well. We had a care partner who shared, she really put speech therapists on blast, I will say. She said stuff that they teach or taught him in speech therapy, it just wasn't functional or real, or it didn't help our day to day. And the speech therapist could have taught him how to have an argument with me, to tell me that he loves me, to tell me that he's mad at me, how to have that back and forth conversation that is so real and true to a spousal relationship. She even said, I think speech therapists get so hung up on their patients how to order from a restaurant that they don't talk about real, true spousal conversation. But that's true. I think that we as speech therapists can do a little bit better about doing things that are really, truly applicable to our patients' lives.
What would she say if a speech pathologist did bring that up? Did you further this conversation with this spouse? If the speech pathologist said, how are you guys doing communicating at home? Are you able to argue? Are you able to negotiate? I'm wondering how she would have reacted if somebody had brought this up.
It's an interesting question. It happens very often that a speech therapist does ask them. But I think just by 5 couples were very willing and very excited to be involved in research on this topic. So I think that they would have been very open if asked by their therapist how they can communicate at home and how their therapist can work on this with them, because it was so prevalent in their lives and it just wasn't being talked about.
From my experience, although in a research study like the one that Allie's talking about, we have a protocol to follow, so we can't necessarily have all the wild conversations that we would love to have. But just from my own experience of asking couples about how things are going at home and are you able to communicate with each other, I have had a lot of different experiences, the whole gamut of experiences, I would say, but mostly people are very happy and very relieved to have the topic opened up, even when it's going very badly. So, as an example, a couple that I remember who were very vivid in my memory were having a terrible time, like they really ended up not communicating about anything. The person with aphasia was the husband, and he needed a little extra time to get things out, and his wife was very busy with many things, and those things just didn't match up. By the time I saw them in the clinic where I was at the time, it had gotten to a very bad point where they just really weren't speaking to each other, and it was really damaging the relationship. And so they allowed me to suggest something that they could try, which we used as communication homework, which was that at the end of each day, they had to pick a time, and we picked it together, whether it was going to be the dinner or bedtime, whatever. They picked a time when they were going to each take the time to share one positive thing from the day, because they were both spiraling into negativity. And this was such a I think from the point of view of a speech pathologist, this seems like a very maybe simple or activity, but it was not simple for them because of the way the relationship dynamic was going. And they actually, when we practiced it in the session, they actually had difficulty imagining anything positive that they might say to each other at the end of the day. And we had to come up with things like, I said, I don't care if you're going to say the sky was blue today, just one thing that was good. And that's where we had to start. And they needed obviously a lot more relationship support than just that communication activity. But I do think that it it helped to chip away at the issues that were affecting their relationship.
100%. You got to crack that door open and you build from there. Dr. Hinckley, I wanted to ask you, with Allie's research and all that you've done in your professional career, you're a big proponent of life participation approach, functional therapy, relationships, living your best life despite aphasia. I would guess it was wonderful when Allie came along and wanted to dig more into this relationship and marriage and connection.
Allie came to her PhD program with lots of clinical experience with aphasia, how they are living their lives. I think her desire to delve into this topic, it springs from her clinical experience, from her caring for people with aphasia. I think, as we've already said, this is a topic that hasn't been addressed as much as it should be. And I'm overjoyed with playing any kind of role in helping Allie move this topic forward. Getting back to the example Allie was giving about ordering things in a restaurant versus talking to your spouse. In my career, I feel that even when we don't necessarily mean to, as speech pathologists, we are often defining participation and functional from our own perspective and not from the perspective of that person who's sitting there. We are thinking of a list of things that are usually considered functional or are usually considered life participation, but may or may not be particularly relevant or important to that particular individual who's sitting there across from you. So I think that bringing the focus onto something like marriage and important partner relationships is part of that conversation of reminding everybody this is not about a preset list of what's important to people with aphasia. It's about what's important to that one person. I think that's very important. So the topic is certainly very with many things that I have valued over the years.
Allie, how do we get speech pathologists to start asking these questions? What are your thoughts on that?
I think in spoken with speech therapists on this topic so far, there is a discomfort with this topic that comes from the speech therapists. I think that some speech therapists feel like they're unqualified to talk about marriages and relationships, that it's outside of our scope of practice. And I reassure them that we're not providing marriage counseling, we're not helping them navigate divorce, or we're communication specialists.
Nice.
And at the core of relationships is communication. If our client came in and said, oh man, I had a really bad fight with a friend last night and I don't know what to do, we would immediately break that down, write out the bullet points of what happened, role play how to navigate, maybe even try a practice phone call, give them a script on that they can say to their friend, check in with them again next. How did that go? How are you feeling about it? Do you feel confident in communicating with your friend? take out the word friend and replace it with spouse. It's the same thing. We're not giving marriage counseling. We are giving support for communication within. That's it.
That one thing we know is that social support, and specifically marriage and family support, is one of the biggest years of continued recovery. Now, if you don't have that, it doesn't mean you can't keep recovering. Of course, you can. You'll have to find maybe different ways. But that marriage or that partnership is going to be a really big factor. And speech pathologists usually don't hesitate to say, hey, get out and do some exercise, or hey, take some time to yourself. All these little tidbits that we know are healthy, that we know are going to support recovery. The primary relationship is a big one. And so we shouldn't avoid it because it is a major support to the person's overall recovery.
I wonder if speech pathologists hesitate because they don't know where it's going to go. They open up Pandora's box. They start saying, how's it going? And next thing they're talking about the S word. And that's where they don't want to go. But I would say you don't have to go there. If we keep it focused on communication and
Right.
connecting with those that are important to you, we can still stay in our lane and really make such an improvement in these families' lives.
One of the care partners that I spoke with in our other project that we're working on, he summarized this so beautifully when I asked his the role of the speech pathologist. And he said, you guys are a primary source of therapeutic contact. We're out here off a cliff after we leave the hospital. And now we're trying to navigate all this stuff. And we don't know who is in charge of each of these things. But you do. So even if I say, hey, I'm struggling communicating with my spouse, and also we're having trouble in the bedroom, you can say, got it. I can work on communicating with your spouse, and I can refer you to the right person for working on your intimacy in the bedroom. You have those connections. You have the ability to refer. It's holistic treatment of our patients. We have to be able to provide support in all areas of their recovery.
What's next on your agenda for research, and where are you with your dissertation and all that?
My dissertation will be starting in the summer, and I'm hoping to dive more into spousal caregivers and their experience in navigating post-stroke aphasia and love and relationship aspects of that.
You are collaborating with another PhD speech pathologist. Tell us a little bit about that project.
I have been collaborating with Dr. Laura Wolford and a few other professionals in the intimacy space, and we are finishing up a paper where we held these intervention support groups for people with aphasia about intimacy, what intimacy looks like for them post-stroke. And we talk a lot about self-image and how they feel about their bodies and how desirable they are now after stroke and aphasia. That was a really interesting study, and I'm very excited for that to be coming out any day now.
Dr. Hinckley, you have to be so proud of Allie, just really filling a gap.
Oh, proud, but also I'm just so fortunate to have the opportunity to work with her. Lucky me, right? It's definitely where things should be moving. So I'm so happy that Allie is there moving it along. And I want to make sure that people know that Allie has taken the extra step to create a summary of this paper. Maybe you were about to say that, but I'm saying it.
Please.
A summary of this paper in plain language so that if you're not a scientist and you don't want to, or an academic and you don't want to read all the gobbledygook that we have to put in those research papers, you can read the plain language version and understand exactly what Allie has done.
Yes, I am linking that in the show notes.
Great.
Thank you both so very much for being here today and for bringing up this very important topic. Thank you, Allie and Dr. Hinckley, for research that finally names what care partners have been living. Allie's research found that care partners experience an identity shift. You've become someone different because you've had to. You're the decision maker now, the financial manager, the social spokesperson and advocate, the one carrying everything your spouse used to carry, plus the weight of grief for who you both used to be. And I'm willing to bet nobody, not one doctor, not one therapist, not one discharge planner has asked you, how are you holding up in all of this? So I'm asking. The Care Partner Compass is a free assessment I created specifically for people like you. It takes 10 minutes and gives you a clear picture of where you're struggling most: boundaries, communication, emotional capacity, practical support. So you can stop guessing what you need and actually know. Now take 10 minutes to assess it. The link is below. Do it for you. Rehab ends. Recovery doesn't. Rebuild communication, rebuild connection, rebuild life. This is life beyond aphasia.